Hey, Slingers, thanks for tuning into another week of the Wordslinger podcast. We're going to be talking about a passion for rare books and where that led at least one author. So stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger, and I am very grateful that you're here tuning in again for another week of the Wordslinger podcast. I'm sporting, if you're not on YouTube, you don't get to see this. I'm going to lean over, but I'm sporting my Central Perk t-shirt today. So that's what you get for not tuning in on YouTube. You don't get to see what I'm wearing. So that said, right now or whenever you get a chance, I would love for you to go over to YouTube and find the Wordslinger podcast. Just search Wordslinger podcast, and you can probably find a link to it actually from the show notes page at wordslingerpodcast.com. Actually, you can click through any of the videos there. But subscribe to the show on that channel because that's where you're going to, I'm hoping things are going to step up actually, but I got very few followers on YouTube right now versus the like nearly 40,000 listeners who download this show from online, from iTunes, from various other podcast hosting services. And I know, I'm guessing most of you probably just listen to this stuff in the background, but if you would, hop over to YouTube and subscribe. So that I normally save that kind of thing for the end of the show, but I wanted to pop in and say that now because it's something that's fresh on my mind. But today I'm talking to Kris Frieswick. She is a thriller author. She's written something really interesting. I love the premise of the book, and it's about a rare book authenticator, which is where the title of this episode is coming from. She is not herself a rare book authenticator, but she is passionate about books and about their origins, and she has these stories in mind, and that's where this came from. And I love that passion can drive someone to produce original content. That's really what it's all about for us authors, especially indie authors. So we're going to talk to Kris Frieswick next, so stick around for that. And I want to apologize in advance for my voice being as rough as it is. This is why there was not an episode last week, folks, because I've been under the weather. I've had some congestion and stuff. So all that said, we're still going to plow through and we're going to do this. We're going to talk to an amazing author, Kris Frieswick, right now. See you on the other side. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you for sticking around through what I'm sure was a brilliant intro. I have no idea what I said at this point in time, but I'm sure that it was filled with genius, and I know that I played up today's guest. I'm talking to Kris Frieswick. She is, among other things, she's a journalist, she's an editor, humorist, teacher, and author. We're going to be talking about her work today and how she got into this, what she's doing. And first off, I want to welcome you, Kris. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So you have quite a resume here. And apparently writing is in your blood, just like it's in mine. So
it's true.
How'd you get started in that?
It's in my blood like in a bad infection that I can't get rid of.
Right. There are no antibiotics for this.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's antibiotic resistant. I have been writing since I was in first grade. Kind of fell in love with it in first grade when a classmate of mine in Mrs. Wall's class, I was in Mrs. Wall's homeroom. I was 7 years old, and my classmate read a story about her summer trip with her family to Disneyland, and all the other kids in the class were rapt. They were completely absorbed by this tale because nobody in my class had ever gone to Disneyland. Because we were in this little tiny town in central Massachusetts where we didn't really travel all that much. And I was listening to her story, and I was like, we get to do that? We get to tell stories? And I remember thinking to myself, I could totally do that. And that was that. I just started writing from that day forward, and it's pretty much the only thing I'm qualified for anymore.
It's a useful skill, though. It parlays into just about everything these days.
It's true.
Or so I
I
like to
think
tell myself.
I think it's the storytelling, the ability to tell a story does, for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's almost no job where the ability to tell a story won't set you ahead above whomever you're in competition with.
That's true. That's very true. So you're one of the things we're going to talk about, and I do want to get into this. And we can jump in now, actually. If you've got a new book coming out, The Ghost Manuscript, which I was given an advanced reader copy for. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So why don't you tell a little about the book itself and how that came to be?
So the book is about a rare book authenticator named Kris Jones. The name Kris is Welsh, which becomes significant as the book goes on. She basically is a damaged human. She has had a really crappy childhood and has decided that books are way, way easier to get along with than people. And so it's totally true. And she basically is sort of, she maintains the relationship she needs to, but mostly she just is completely immersed in her love for old rare manuscripts, specifically Dark Age manuscript. The Dark Ages are generally considered to be between 400 and 700 AD. And her specialty is in the Dark Ages in the British Isles. They weren't the United Kingdom then. They were just a bunch of islands with that had been abandoned by the Romans in the early 400s to the marauding hordes of Anglo-Saxons, which were slowly sort of taking over the land from the east to the west. So she specializes in collecting these books, and her biggest client is a man named John Harper. He's a multi-billionaire tech titan that she finds out at the beginning of the book has been committed to an insane asylum with an unknown malady. And his son has called the auction house that Kris works for because he wants to sell the entire library of Dark Age manuscripts that his father has collected, as well as the house. So she's called in because she's so familiar with the collection. She helped John Harper collect all of these books as in her role as a rare book authenticator. She goes to the house to help authenticate all the books. Basically, that process involves making sure that what's in the catalog that will be presented to the buyer is identical to what's actually in the library. And in the course of authenticating the library, she finds out about a manuscript that isn't in the catalog. It's an ancient book that not only is it not in the catalog, it's not in any catalog, which is very rare and unusual for rare manuscripts, because most rare manuscripts, especially from that time period, there weren't that many of them. So almost all of them are known to the collecting community, and almost all of them have been reviewed by scholars and are somewhere in some catalog somewhere. So she's taken aback when she sees this book that isn't on the grid at all.
Yeah.
She goes to meet with John Harper in the insane asylum and asks him about this book, and he tells her that he will give her this book as well as the entire contents of his library if she will follow the clues in this book to the tomb that is mentioned at the end of the book. And all he wants is credit for the find. The reason he's so interested in it is because he believes that this book was the personal journal for a monk who was the personal priest of the man that would become known as King Arthur. And the tomb of King Arthur supposedly has these vast riches of his people. During the Anglo-Saxon War, the British people would hide their wealth because the Anglo-Saxons would steal it. And so that's why we keep hearing in the news about these huge troves of gold being found in the hillsides of England and places like that, because they were like, I'll come back and get it when the Anglo-Saxons are gone.
Right.
And then here we are 1,500 years later, and we're digging it up now.
Yeah.
So basically, she's like, you think that this book points to the tomb of King Arthur? Like, he's a legend. He was a person who didn't really exist. Well, it turns out King Arthur was a legend based on real life people that really did live back then.
Right.
And so she thinks he's crazy, which he is. But she decides to pursue, she's like, hey, what do I get to lose? Like, I can gain this entire priceless collection of books, which are my love. If I just, nose around in some ancient neighborhoods over in the UK and see what I can find. Well, she doesn't realize that of course, there's other people who are looking for this tomb as well, and mayhem ensues.
So, okay, I got so many questions.
Go.
The first is,
Go.
do you know someone who is a rare book authenticator?
I do not, but
Okay,
I
that's a
have.
fascinating field right there, all on its own.
I totally agree. So I read a book called in researching this book, my book, which is my debut novel. I have never written a novel before, so I started out doing what I always do, which is research the crap out of it.
Yeah.
I read a book called A Gentle Madness.
Okay.
By a man named Nicholas Baines, who's actually based in Massachusetts. And it's this huge, thick book that you almost can't find in the library anymore, about people that were obsessed with rare books. And it was eye-opening because it gives you insight into this weird little subculture of people that collect rare manuscripts and how obsessed they are. And they have a legitimate psychological condition called bibliophilia. And I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing in the world. Like, you're obsessed, you're in love and obsessed with books. And I was like, I might have that. I don't know.
I think I may know a few thousand people who suffer from this condition.
Exactly. So this book is for sure for them. And so just once you start down that rabbit hole, you're a goner if you like books. And then also I just recently realized that I might also be a little, I think I might have had collectors in my family because I inherited a bunch of really old books from my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And I was just going through them the other day, and I have a tattered ancient book from I think it's a first edition of Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, with like the hard cover and like the beautiful old engravings inside that were done for the original edition. And I'm going through my boxes. I'm like, I have a bunch of really old books. I might be Kris. I might be her, you know? I suddenly realized I have all these books in my life, which I forgot about, to be honest, because, you know, you move 1,000 times and you just pick the box up and you take it, you forget what's in it. But yeah. So that's how that book came about.
That's all right. Yeah, that sounds like a fair start for just about any book. And of course, you're a journalist, so you're familiar with how to do decent research. So what was sort of involved in the research process for this?
So it was sort of scattershot. I had a vague idea what I wanted the book to be about. I didn't really know what the plot was going to be, but I was sort of in the what if phase of my research. Like, what if this? What if that? I had like I said, I had a kind of a vague outline. And as I followed that research, it kept leading me to other places.
Right. Right.
And then I would research that, and that would lead me. And honestly, the plot is sort of an amalgamation of all this cool stuff I dug up along the way. And I kind of turned it into a plot, and it hangs together because it's almost everything in the book is either true, heavily supported by theory that it could be true, or so close to the truth that it's virtually indistinguishable. Like I've replicated some historical events, but changed the time period slightly to kind of fit in with my plot. But honestly, like, I would not be surprised if I found out that the events that occur in my book were actually happened. I'm not saying they did, but I wouldn't surprise me if one day we find out that it all hangs together the way I suggest.
Right. Yeah, because I've had that experience. Like I write archaeological thrillers, and I had written an idea, just an idea based on research I'd done. And probably not even about a month before my book even went live, a news story broke, basically in one of the archaeological magazines that I read, about something so close that it looked prescient. Like somehow I tapped in.
Isn't that amazing when that happens and you're like, oh, I knew I was onto something.
Yeah.
But I think that's true when you know a lot about something, when you've really dug down and you've sort of gone down those little dark alleyways of knowledge that most people don't know.
Right.
You see patterns and you see relationships to things that a lot of people wouldn't see because they don't have the background, they don't have the context for it. So I think that's a lot of why the plot is what it is today, is because all of this stuff started hanging together, and I just followed where it led. I mean, obviously you have to drive the bus a little bit as the writer, but to the extent that the characters told me what they wanted and the plot, the research told me what it wanted,
Right.
I was kind of along for the ride a lot of the time.
That's excellent. So did you visit any of these places that were featured
Yeah,
in the
so
book?
my husband's from Wales.
Okay.
And so the main reason I wanted to set the book in Wales, it's based in many places, but predominantly it's based in Wales, is because I just fell so madly in love with that culture, the country, the countryside, the history, the richness of just the ancientness of that part of the world, and its proud history is one of the few places that was not overrun by various invading groups of people over the centuries.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a beautiful, beautiful culture, and it's ripe with Arthurian legend.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people feel the whole Arthur legend started with the Welsh.
Right.
And was it just sort of co-opted by the British?
It's interesting because, well, they've done a lot of that over there. The English are actually the descendants of the Anglo-Saxons that came and kind of vanquished the eastern part of the country. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It shouldn't surprise anyone, actually. But the Welsh are still a fiercely independent people. They are all about their history, and so it's just such an honor to be able to write about it in a way that I feel like does that region. Specifically, the region that I wrote about is called, believe it or not, Mumbles. It's right near Swansea.
Right.
The Welsh spelling doesn't look anything like the word Mumbles, but that's how it's pronounced. But I just, my in-laws, both of whom sadly have passed, are from there. My brother-in-law, my husband, extended family. So I just absolutely love it there. It's a haunting and beautiful place.
Well, and see, visiting a place like that adds something to the work that becomes obvious. I think the readers pick up on it. I think
that's one of the things that I've heard from a lot of the readers who've gotten advanced, is just the essence of the description of the places is so visceral, and that's because I love it so much. You can really tell.
Yeah.
I really love all the places that I wrote about in the book.
Yeah.
I wrote about 3 specific places, and they're all very near and dear to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Why do it otherwise, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why travel is so important for authors, to travel as much as possible, as widely as possible. So.
Yeah. There's some things you just can't absorb through Google Maps or Google Earth.
True.
Which is, I'm not going to lie, I use the heck out of it.
Oh, I do too.
Because it really helps you sort of orient like distances and what a place looks like.
Plus, there are places that are just forbidden. You just can't go there physically.
Exactly. Or you could, but you might die. Yeah.
You might die, and I'd rather live.
Hard to write like that. But there's a feeling that you get in places if you let yourself feel it. If you open yourself up, you get a vibe from a place that you can never ever replicate online. It's just impossible.
Right. That's true. So you've got all this, and now are you going to write another book at some point?
I have 2 books that I am going to be starting as soon as all of the book tour madness and marketing is over, because believe it or not, that is a lot of work and a lot of time. It's wonderful. It's like a dream come true, but it's still, time and energy. So I've got, we're going to come back to Karis, of course, because when you get to the end of the book, you'll see that things are left in a state for her. She's in a mood at the end, and we need to kind of come back and find out what happens with that. And then I've got another book that's on a completely different topic. That is another one of those, like this book. The Ghost Manuscript was based on an idea that grabbed me and would not let me go. And then I have another book that exactly the same thing happened. I was visiting London in May, and I went to an exhibit at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and I saw something there that just reached out and grabbed me by the throat. And that's going to be my next book. So I
Okay.
can't wait.
And that's not connected. It's not part of a series.
Totally different. It'll be
Okay.
it's a one-time thing, and I can't wait to start.
All
I've
right.
already done so much research on it. It's ridiculous. Because it's sort of the same thing as with the Ghost manuscript, but
Yeah.
this is based in almost entirely in fact,
Yeah.
except for one portion of the story that no one really knows what happened next.
Yeah.
And the book I'm going to write will fill in the blanks on that.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
yeah,
I love
I'm
that.
really, really excited.
That
So excited
reminds
to
me.
start.
My wife and I watched it, and I cannot remember the name of the movie, but we watched a movie recently that was because everyone knows that Agatha Christie went missing for 11 days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
No one knows what happened, including her. And so that we watched a movie that filled in that gap, and it was very
Right.
plausible.
That's the fun part. I guess my new stock and trade, and I guess it's evolving, is to like take things that are real and then like find the little plot that for the thing that nobody knows what happened,
Yeah.
and fill in the little blanks there. I mean, maybe that's what all of fiction writing is, but
Maybe, but I think that's a good niche. I think you could probably milk that for quite a while, because there are a lot of little unsolved mysteries.
I know. Well, I want Karis, my main character, Karis Jones. I want her to get involved in a lot of those little mysteries, because ancient manuscripts contain. I mean, think of for a moment. The Library of Alexandria was burned.
Mm-hmm.
Think of what was in there.
Right.
All the mysteries, all the things that were like, I wonder how they did this. I wonder how they, that was all in there.
Right.
And it was one copy, and it got burned up.
Right.
And I always have this like weird phobia that we're putting all of our knowledge on the internet, and it's one neutron. We're one neutron or one neutron bomb or one serious hack away from
EMP.
being
right
back in Alexandria all over again, starting from scratch. And it happened again in the Dark Ages. The knowledge was largely exterminated from much of Europe and the British Isles by illiterate individuals. And I think to myself, it wouldn't be that hard to do it again. We do it with false information this time instead of burning things up. We just pollute real information with false information. But we're so vulnerable to having our knowledge exterminated. It's sort of like a weird little doomsday prepper sub niche, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. See, now I get. So what was it? Maybe it was Fahrenheit 454, where they were memorizing
burn books.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have to memorize. So we're going to have people going around memorizing web pages and forum threads and.
Exactly. Or hey, just the manual for my damn refrigerator.
Right.
Which only exists online now. It's like,
exactly,
what is this button for? I don't know. There's no manual.
Yeah, they put a lot of faith in us when they give us appliances. Now they'll figure it out. That button that has a flame on it, they'll know not to touch that.
With a big circle. What is a circle with a slash through? What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. So you, well, that sounds cool. I think you've got the roots of a really cool thriller series. She's going to be kind of the Robert Langdon of book authentic. Man, I'm
authenticators.
I can't say it.
It's okay. It's okay.
I can write it. That's all that's important.
Book people. We'll just call them book people.
Authenticator.
Yes.
Get it.
There you go.
All right. That's very cool. So you've already got a couple more in mind. What about the other one that's not connected? Are you thinking that's going to be a separate series, or just a?
No, that'll be a one-off. That'll be a one-off for sure. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep. It's good. That's going to be fun. That's going to be really exciting. Like I said, I've already done so much research on that one. It's based. I'll give you a little sneak preview. It's based on something that happened on the Lusitania during its final sailing from New York to what was supposed to be Ireland.
Right.
Or sorry, Liverpool. Was it Liverpool? No, so of course I can't even remember. I'm so in the weeds with it. But it's based on a completely true story. And my novel will fill in the blanks for how we get from point A to point B, where nobody actually got the real story.
Yeah, you're dipping in stuff I enjoy reading. So
good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. Exactly right. I think there's a genre of reader out there that just love the Da Vinci Code and love that idea, like
Hmm.
taking things that were real and that like a real history, real authentic artifacts,
Right.
real phenomenon within art and so forth, and then weaving a narrative around that.
Right.
That's I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, I know a
I do
lot of
too.
people like talk smack about Da Vinci Code and
Talk all the
subsequent.
smack you want.
It's
It was
like
like the
he
third
sold a
best-selling fiction.
bunch. I know exactly. He sold a bunch of books. All my hoity-toity literary friends are like, the Da Vinci Code. Oh, I couldn't finish it. And I'm like, I finished it in
Whatever.
4 hours.
Right. Exactly.
I was just
Same
like,
here.
whoa, my God, this is amazing.
I
And so I
actually
really,
pre podcast days, I was part of a radio show. We interviewed Dan Brown before he was known, before he had just written Digital Fortress. I knew back then that dude was going to do something pretty amazing. So he even mentioned our radio show in the notes of Angels and Demons.
oh wow, that's
So
amazing.
yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I feel like I wanted to do that, but I wanted to do it with a strong female protagonist. I
right.
wanted her to be just a normie, just like a normal person who didn't
Hmm.
have any like superpowers, wasn't trained in the military, wasn't an ex-Navy SEAL, wasn't a former spy, like didn't
Right.
have like psychic abilities, didn't have a trained eagle that knocked guns out of people's hands. I just wanted her to be just like me,
Right.
who like had a specialty, but other than that was fairly unremarkable. And she gets
Hmm.
thrust into this scenario and the shit spirals out of control and she's
Yeah,
got to figure out what to do.
I like
Um,
it.
so that's kind of where I wanted to, and mostly I wanted to write a book that I want to read.
Exactly.
You know
That's
what
the
I mean?
key. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There are a lot of readers like us, so we should probably be aiming for us, you know?
Yes. Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did. And so hopefully, I mean, I know I like the book, so I guess I hit my target readership.
You're in. Are you, is it traditionally published or are you self-publishing or how did you
No,
do
I'm publishing my publisher is Postal Press.
it?
It's a
Okay.
small publisher, but they're awesome, and we're going out with in hardcover, which is
Excellent.
virtually unheard of anymore for
Right.
debut authors, unless
Right.
you get a huge six-figure advance from one of the majors. But
Right.
they love the book and they are really committed to it, and they're like, this is going to be a big deal. So I'm
Yeah.
so happy with their support. And it's so gratifying to talk to people like you about this book, because I believe that it's organizations like yours and other
Yeah.
types of media where it's readers talking to readers, that like that's the stuff that gets a book
Yeah.
into the consciousness of the reader community. It's not the ads, and it's not I mean, obviously the book tour is great. You go to the bookstores, and
Right.
I mean, what could be better than that?
The book tours are a good time to do that, the research.
Yeah,
That's I do a lot of my reading when I'm
yeah,
driving around telling people about the book.
exactly.
So, all right. Well, look, I promised you I would keep this under 30 minutes, so we are
Thank you.
closing in our time. But why don't you tell people where they can find you and your work online?
You can look me up on the World Wide Web, I believe it's called. A
For
crazy little
now,
thing called the internets.
until the next EMP.
Exactly, the next EMP will take it down. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at KrisFrieswickAuthor.com. That's KRIS, F as in Frank, RIES as in Sam, WICK, author.com, or just go to theghostmanuscript.com, and that will get you right to the book's webpage. And you can sign up for my newsletter there, and you can like link to my Facebook, Twitter, all the other things we're supposed to do with social media that
all
I'm
that
not very
important
good at.
stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not
All
very
right.
good at any of it. I'd rather be writing.
Same here. Yeah, same here, but you got to do it. It's just part of the gig now.
It so is. It's true.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for having me
Thank
on,
you.
and I hope to see you at the signing.
Yeah. You're going to be in Houston at Murder by the Book soon, right?
That is correct.
That's
correct.
A favorite haunt of mine. So I was
Great.
planning to try to be there. I'll introduce.
You know what? Let me tell you what the exact date that's going to be. I believe it's August. And hang on, stand by, please. I will be at Murder by the Book at 6 p.m. on April 10th. That's a Wednesday evening.
Excellent.
So please come by.
Yeah. If you're in the Houston area, listeners and viewers, swing by. What was it? August what now? August
August. Oh, now you made me
August
close
10th?
my book. It's August 10th, Wednesday,
August 10th.
April. Sorry, April. I said, did I say
April.
August? I
You
meant
did say
April.
August.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm so,
That's okay.
so bad. Oh my
I could
God.
have
I'm like
sworn
the
it was
worst
April.
I'm the worst author on tour ever. And I give you
That's
a totally
why
wrong month.
that's why I had to ask. That's
It's
why I had to ask. April
Wednesday,
10th.
April 10th, 6 p.m. Murder by the Book in Houston. Come and watch me say things that are wrong there as well.
And if you come, you might get to meet me too. I don't know
Exactly.
if
It's a twofer.
that's going to draw exactly one person out of Houston, but we'll see what happens. All right. Well, thank you, Kris. Stick around for just a second. And everyone else, you're probably hearing the groovy Brit music. You may dance in place at will. Stick around and hear whatever crazy thing I'm going to say after this break. And I'll see you on the other side.
Hear your book the way it was meant to be heard. With a fully custom soundtrack based on your material. An album of music that perfectly fits your characters, your settings. Hear your book today. SonataInscribe.com.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kris Frieswick. This is going to be, and I hope you buy her books. Check out her books. You can find those on the show notes page at wordslingerpodcast.com. You're looking for episode 176. That will get you all things related to this episode. Check it out. Check out her website. I'm very excited for what she's done there. I'm happy to help promote her, and I hope she sees some great best-selling success. Just like I wish for all you guys. Now, this week, in our little fireside chat, one of the things that's been on my mind lately, some things that I've been tinkering with, sort of making some changes, taking on some new tasks in my life. My wife and I both have been looking into more stuff around this idea of like, I'm just going to throw it out there. And I know some people roll their eyes at this, but I want to put it out there. So we've been looking into more of the stuff around law of attraction, right? If you saw the movie The Secret, or if you read the book, you got kind of a glimpse of the whole law of attraction thing. For years, I've really enjoyed kind of looking in on this. But what's changed recently? We've learned quite a bit, and I've put some things in practice, and then I kind of drift. But I will say this: the principles that I've learned because of that idea, because of the film and the book, let me just put it this way: it inspired me to go on and look deeper, which is, I think, part of the point, right? So recently, my wife and I have picked up a book called Success Principles, which is written by Jack Canfield. He is one of the people who was interviewed for The Secret. He's also the author, one of the co-authors rather, and the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul. These, which were wildly inspirational books. I actually have a couple. I've got Chicken Soup for the Writer's Soul, for example. Some great inspirational stories in there. And I think there is great value in looking for inspiration. Seeking out inspiration. It's one of the reasons why part of my mission statement is to inspire. My mission is to inform and inspire, educate and entertain. And I've come to realize that as I pursue those four pillars of my mission, I'm actually accomplishing quite a bit in the world. That's the conclusion I have come to. So, at any rate, so we've been looking closer at some of this. The Success Principles is a book I highly recommend you read, regardless of what your career path is or what your life path is. I think that these principles are foundational to real success and to changing your life in positive ways. So that's the stuff I've been working on. Now, how this applies to authors. So, we're in a business where we're using our imaginations. Now, I'm talking to fiction authors, but I'm also talking to the nonfiction folks in the crowd, okay? I know that a lot of... so nonfiction, you're focusing on sharing your expertise and your insights. But you have to do this in a way that's relatable, so you get a little creative with it. And you have to really kind of start with this... I love this foundational notion that what you say matters. So in a sense, authors, we practice this law of attraction idea all the time without even really thinking about it. Like we have enough confidence in our own voice and in our own perspectives and in our own imaginations that we truly and honestly believe that what we write down has value. This is something I'm kind of coming around to, honestly, because, we also struggle with this fraud syndrome thing. This, that we are big frauds. We're big fakers. I deal with this all the time. Believe it or not. I mean, all the time, I'm constantly kind of running up against this weird anxiety that someone is eventually going to figure out that I'm just BSing my way through life and they're going to take everything away from me. It's irrational because I study this industry. I study the craft. I study all of it. I work very hard to make sure that what I'm producing is my best work. Does that mean there's no room for it to get better? No. That doesn't mean that at all. In fact, I know that there's room to get better, which is why I keep working at it. But I think as writers, I love this idea that we are so bold and so confident and so sure of ourselves that we're going to put our ideas on a page on 150 to 300 pages, maybe more, maybe less. But we're going to put our information that we know, our confidence and our insights into a book, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to have the audacity to ask for money for it. And we believe we'll get it. I think writers are probably among the bravest people there are. Because while we may not be risking life and limb, we're doing something that makes us feel much more vulnerable sometimes than even climbing a rock face or skydiving or fighting a bull or choking out a mountain lion with our bare hands. So anyway, now all that said, this all kind of comes down to attitude, and just as I sort of outlined that I am continuously looking into studying craft, the business, the industry. I think that that's all part of it. And I think that you should have a regimen of that sort of thing. You should be, I read, I admit that I don't read as many books on craft. I probably should read more, but I do study craft. And in that everything I read is a study of craft. I am always picking apart the things that people write to see how they did what they did. So it's sort of a reverse engineering study of craft for me. For some people, it's much better to pick up a book that is an outlined principle of craft. And whatever method you choose, you should make a point of at least once a month spending hours on studying craft and making yourself better at this. The same goes for business and marketing. This is a business. I mean, it sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Some people resent that. They resent the very idea that they're working in a business, that they're creating a business. They want to keep the art pure. And I think those people are right. They do want to keep the art pure. But if you've got any designs on making a living from this stuff, then it's a business. Otherwise, it's just a hobby, and it doesn't matter whether you make any money on it. So all that said, I think the stuff that we've been doing lately, I like looking into the law of attraction stuff, because what it does is lead me down a path of more study and information about mindset and about improving myself, which leads to making more and better decisions in my life. So whether you buy into law of attraction or not, and I went back and forth for a while, I'm a firm believer now. I actually firmly believe that there are principles in the universe at play, that God has built all of this as a system that we can learn how to use. I think God uses that same system, and I think we can learn to use it ourselves. As we change the way we think, we change our outcomes. It seems logical to me. And I know it applies to writing, because this is exactly what happened to me with my own writing. So I've been writing my whole life. And I wrote professionally for a very long time. But I kept avoiding writing books for years. I wrote books. I'd start a book. I had my collection of what I call my thirds. And they were the first third of a book. Without fail, I would get a third of the way through a book and I'd abandon the project. And maybe it was more like halfway through a book, but I think in terms of sheer volume, I was only producing maybe 3 to 5 chapters, and then I'd abandon the whole project. I think that's pretty common. I think a lot of authors have done something like that. I think a lot of people who aspire to being an author have done something like that. So for years I would do that. I'd set that stuff aside. I had files on my hard drive that were starter novels, I had some complete novels. I eventually wrote a couple of novels and even got one picked up by a traditional publisher, which I eventually bought my way back out of that project. 1 second. Water time. Sorry about that. So the train of thought has derailed. But I had been writing forever, but I hadn't been writing books because it was hard. I decided it was hard, and I was right. It was hard. But what changed for me? So when back in like 2006, I had my contract. Back in 2008, I started self-publishing, and I went through this whole grueling process of taking 2 years to write a book. That I published in 2008, and then taking another 2 years to write the sequel, and another 2 years to write the sequel beyond that, to have a complete trilogy. So 6 years for 3 books. Honestly, if you were in the traditional world, that's going to work out just fine for you. That's pretty much the pace at which traditional authors are writing and publishing. Of course, they also have the benefit of, an editorial team helping to shape the book, people to help market the book. They have all these resources that come from a traditional contract. So you find yourself in a scenario like that. You find yourself kind of justifying the amount of time it takes, even though you're making no money. Even in a traditional contract, I really wouldn't have. I don't think I would have made much money, if any at all, from those 3 books. What changed for me was going to I went to what eventually would become the Smarter Artist Summit, now defunct. They had the last one this past year, and maybe they'll bring it back, maybe they won't. But it was the self-publishing podcast guys had a group, a little seminar. Handful of us, like 20 of us, got in a room. I was in there with Damon Courtney, who went on to found BookFunnel. I was in there with Honore Corder, who went on to write Prosperity for Writers, and dozens of other books aimed at the writing market and prosperity. Brian Meeks, who you may know from this show, who wrote, among other things, he wrote a book about Amazon ads. How to refine your advertising. In fact, I'd say out of the 20 or so people who were in that room, I believe probably 15 of us went on to do some pretty remarkable stuff. To kind of, we created careers around our writing, and it certainly changed my life. Sitting in that room, I was directionless. I was aiming more at the nonfiction market at that time. I had the Wordslinger podcast up and running. I had written had not yet written 30-Day Author. I'd written most of it. I had my 3 books, a 4th book on the way. and it was taking forever. But I was focusing more on nonfiction than fiction when I had the sudden realization that I wanted to be a fiction writer, which you would think is a no-brainer since that's what I said for years. But there's a difference between what you say and what you do. Your actions determine your outcome, right? Saying out loud, I'm going to climb that mountain, doesn't get you to the top of the mountain. Now, it might be enough to commit, and energize you to take action, but it's the action that gets you there. I was busy thinking about being a fiction writer and talking about being a fiction writer, but I wasn't so busy in actually doing the work. It was a hobby. I was doing it on the side while I built something else. I had fallen into the same trap I always fell into, and sometimes still fall into, which was this thinking that I'll build a career that can finance me so that I can finally write books full time. And the irony of that is, if I'd spent all that time and energy actually writing the books, making probably the same amount of money as I made, right? Which wasn't much. But if I just kept plugging away and writing the books, I would have built the writing career I wanted much faster. Now I'm at that career now. I mean, there are little things I'm still polishing, getting perfect, getting right. But I'm going to say 90, or let's call it 98% to the career that I always wanted. And there are little concessions I have made. I don't think that a life without compromise is an attractive life. I've been thinking about this. I think compromise is part of building a beautiful life. Sometimes you want to change your plans a little to accommodate the plans of others. Not so that they can dictate what your life is going to be, but so that you can experience new things and share new things that you might not have realized were there. Compromise is a tool, just like anything else. So all that said, the work that I've been doing lately has focused on getting my head right, changing my focus, changing my goals, and basically upping the game, stepping up to a new level. And I'm doing some stuff, I'm doing other stuff in my life too, because I think I actually, for a time there, I focused so intently on the writing and publishing that I was letting other things slide. My wife and I have a great relationship, but we could, there are a few things we could work on that we could do better so that we could get along a little better sometimes, because we butt heads. And you could probably imagine, just from what little you likely know about me, that I might be slightly difficult to live with sometimes. So that makes my wife a freaking saint, and makes her stronger. So we're going to say it was all for the good. But I've been changing my attitude towards our relationship, knowing that I do need to compromise more. I do need to accommodate her goals in life more, and it's enriching my life. It's actually adding positive energy to my life, which I never would have admitted prior to now. So, because it's always it's got to be Kevin's way or the highway. Not quite. It's never been that bad, but it is frequently it is all about me deciding, we're going to have this in our life, and then me working diligently to get us there, only to realize that Kara had no interest in that. So compromise comes in when we actually have conversations with each other and talk about our mutual goals. So where you can use this kind of thing, okay. So the idea behind law of attraction, if you're not familiar with it, it boils down to this: what you think about brings about your reality, right? What you focus on becomes your reality. For me, it became, I started focusing on being a fiction writer and being successful at it, and that became my reality. It didn't happen overnight. Could have. because I've had things that did happen overnight because I put enough energy and focus into it. Now, this is not wishful thinking, and it's not magic. It's what it is discipline and commitment. Because results come when we're focused, when we're disciplined. So if I say, I'm going to sit down every day and I'm going to write a minimum of 2,000 words every single day, and I'm going to produce a book every 30 days. If I'm committed to that idea, and I follow through, then results will come. Results do come. One of those results is I get a book every 30 days. If I put that book out for sale, and I commit on a few other fronts, I commit to every day I'm going to do 10 minutes of marketing, and maybe that marketing is just sending an email or putting something on social, or maybe I'm buying a Facebook ad. But if I commit to that, then that's going to have a result. So see, it's not about, we talk about laws of these laws as if they're mystic laws. They're actually literal things that we intuitively know are true. We know that if we put consistent effort into something, we're going to get a result. And the idea is we measure the result, decide that's not the result we want, or that is the result we want, and we change our plans accordingly. We change our actions accordingly. So for writers, if you just decide, I want to have a book, maybe it's not every 30 days. You may decide that's just too stressful for you. I would actually encourage you to push yourself. I did it. I did it in like extreme intervals. I figured out how to write a book in 30 days, and then decided I'll write one in 15, and then decided I'd write one in a week, and then decided I'd write one in a day. Is that something I'm going to do over and over again? No. I'm not going to write a book in a day, probably ever again for the rest of my life. But the point is that I know that I can, and that empowers me. So I actually encourage you to push yourself, find your limit, and then push yourself past that limit as often and as hard as you can. And as you do that, you grow. I had someone ask me what I might suggest for improving writing speed. Now, there are physical things I suggest, which is just, typing is my primary skill, right? So there are tools online, free tools, where you can do these like little typing competitions of a sort. You're competing against yourself mostly, but like I found one online that is a race car, and the faster you type, more accurately you type, the faster and further along your race car moves, and you're racing against other cars. So there's a way to physically improve typing speed, as an example, but that's just you reading off the screen and reflexively moving your fingers. When it comes to improving writing speed, it's really about improving how easily you can access that flow, that state of flow in your brain that you get into when you're just really in it. So, and if you haven't experienced this, it's very difficult to explain because you have experienced it, but you may not have experienced it as applied to writing or something relatable like that. But if you've ever just been involved in something, like you're playing a game, a video game, for example, you're playing a video game and you get into this state where you really just can't lose. Like you're just on a roll. You're completely immersed in it. You're not having to think about it. You don't have to, you don't have to remember that this is the Y key and this is the X, the Y button and the X button, and this is what they do. You don't even think about it anymore. It's integrated into your psyche at a level that's automatic. That's an example of the state of flow. I get into this state when I'm writing. Suddenly, I'm no longer sitting at a keyboard. I'm no longer staring at a screen. I'm in the scene. I'm with Dan Kotler and Roland Denzel in a tunnel under a mountain in the Sonoran desert. everything that I'm seeing and doing and thinking is in that moment, right? So that's a state of flow. The trick here is to be able to access that cleanly and quickly, and that happens when you practice as much as possible. And focus is the key. So for some folks, they have to turn off all distractions. Some folks have like special writing programs. IA Writer is a good example of this, where it's a focused writing program where you can shut off everything else and you've got nothing but this, either black or white screen and plain text with no formatting, To me, that's kind of extreme. I like formatting. But, there are focus modes in like Scrivener. Ulysses had a pretty good focus mode. Microsoft Word even has its version of a focus mode. There are apps that turn off notifications or won't allow you to access Facebook for an hour or whatever. So there's all these tools out there that help people focus, and you should look at that, because that means focus actually. People are clicking to that idea that focus is important, right? Now I don't need those tools myself. And I like to have browser tabs open. I do work. I do research on the fly sometimes. I do all my research in advance, in that I do all the reading and studying, watching movies and videos and listening to audio about the topic. And then all of that is synthesized in my brain. But when I need a quick reference to something, I can remember that there was a story about the Hohokam Indians over here. I can remember that there was something to do with the Celtic gods over here. I remember there was something about the Egyptians over here. I like to be able to quickly reference that, and so I don't take a ton of notes, because the internet is my notebook. That may or may not work for you, but it works for me. But the idea here is you achieve a higher let's say skill when it comes to flow, accessing flow, the more you do it. And so you want to spend these moments in the morning or evenings, whenever you're doing your writing. You want to try to do sprints and push yourself further and further each time. So just like the typing speed, what you want to do is see how quickly you can get into flow, which means ignoring everything else and focusing only on what you're writing. See how quickly you can get into it and how long you can sustain that. What I've learned recently, and I think I knew this instinctively because I already did this, but I've learned that there's research to back this up. But we are built to take breaks. There are these methods you can use. People use where you do sprints. You write for I don't even know how they work, honestly, but you write for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, take a 10-minute break, and you come back and you write another 10 or 20 minutes. Do that. If you want to look into some methods of it, I'm trying to remember the name of the method. Nick Thacker would be able to tell you. He uses one of those methods, I believe. But doing little sprints like that is very helpful to you. It's just like training yourself to run a mile or to run a marathon. You do quick bursts. You push yourself with each burst to go just a little further, and then over time you gradually reset your limit. You reset that upper limit mark. You can do it with your typing speed. You can do it with your state of flow. You can do it with your daily word count. It's just about pushing yourself consistently, and consistency is the key. So, you can get a lot of advice out there. There's a lot of people who talk about this sort of this performance-based obsession we have right now. Guys like Tim Ferriss. If you've never had a chance, read his 4-Hour Work Week. Highly recommend that. It sets you up for a great mindset and a great model for the author life, actually. But these are all tools, and the point here is you want consistency, but you want it to be focused consistency aimed at a goal. So I want a book in 30 days. I want to put this book out in 30 days. Well, what's going to have to happen for me to be able to release a book in 30 days? And I've not started. We're on, April 1st, and by April 30th, we want a book on Amazon. What's the process? Well, we can work backwards. Okay? We can decide, okay, I want a book on Amazon and it needs to be 60,000 words because I've averaged, the books in my category and they're, they come out to, or 100,000, whatever word count you feel is appropriate. And you can get to that word count any way you want. So let's just use 60,000 words. I'm going to write a 60,000 word book and it's got to release in 30 days. Well, you know that there's going to have to be some editing. So give yourself a week of editing. So that's, let's call it a business week, and we'll back up 5 days from the 30th. Now we're on the 25th. So by the 25th, you have to have the manuscript done, complete, right? Ready for editing. So that means that you're going to have to spend 25 days knocking out X number of words per minute, right? Or words per day, I'm sorry. So we've got 25 days. All right, we know we want 60,000 words divided by 25 days. Means we got to put out 2,400 words a day. I used a calculator. So actually, I used a calculator app. So 2,400 words per day. And if you're going to take days off, that means you got to make up for that word count somewhere. So 2,400 to 3,000 words per day will get that book done by the 25th, and you spend the next 5 days editing. You're going to need, there's other things you're going to have to do. Get a cover, write some copy for the book description. Maybe you do some advertising. Maybe you do a social media push. There's a lot of things that go into a book release. But, in just terms of actual production, you can figure out exactly what you need to do. Well, knowing what you need to do, that's like the most amazing gift you can have in anything. As a writer, as a painter, as a house builder, as a marathon runner, as someone running for a political position, doesn't matter. Knowing the steps you have to take is like this huge gift. So that to get a book out in a certain amount of time at a certain word count, you have to produce X number of words per day. That's the whole 30-day author formula, by the way. No big secret here. It's all free. I'll give it. The formula is free. The idea is we know our outcome, so we know what variables that we have control over, right? I mean, I love the whole algebraic approach to this. It's like we know the outcome, and we know at least one of the variables. So, in fact, we know a couple of variables. We know that we're aiming to get a 60,000 word book. That's our outcome. We know that we have 30 days to produce it. So we know that we have to solve for X, which is how many words per day do we have to write. And that's it. That's it. Now that's for producing a book. Now the same principle applies to other aspects of your writing career. It's all about measurement at this point. So we know that we want to make, let's say, $10,000 a month in book sales. We know that we make 70% of our cover price, and we know our cover price is $4.99. How many books do we have to sell to make $10,000 in a month? It's math, right? So, and this is math everyone can do. And if you can't do it, have someone walk you through it. Ask somebody. I know that I want to make $10,000 a month. I know I priced my book at $4.99. How many copies of my book do I have to sell each month to make $10,000? I get 70%. I get 30%. I get 40%. If you know all those variables, you can figure this out. So once you have that target, then you take the result into a whole new equation. now you start experimenting. Okay, whenever I send an email to my list, let's say I've got 2,000 people on my mailing list, or I've got 20,000 people or 40,000 people on my mailing list. And I know that every time I send them an email to buy a book, I can count on 10% of those people buying the book, right? So now you start to see, if you've got 2,000 people on your list, and let's just say you have to sell 200 books a day. Nah, probably not. You have to sell maybe, I don't want to have to do math on the air. We'll just say we figured out we have to sell 200 books a day to make our number. This is probably wildly wrong. Anyone who's doing the math to figure out whether or not I know what I'm talking about, I apologize. I'm just trying to throw some numbers out there. But let's say I know I need to sell 200 books a day, and I've got a list of 2,000 readers, and I send out an email, and 10% of those people will buy the book. Now I know that I'm hitting the right number. 10% of 2,000 is 200, right? So those 200 people buy the book, and I know that I'm going to make my number at the end of the month. So, and then the numbers change with certain variables. So if I know that on average 10% of my readers are going to buy when I pitch a book, and I know I've got a set number of readers, now I know I need to improve the number of readers on my mailing list, because that's one of my marketing tools, right? So what can I do to improve the number of readers on the mailing list? Well, maybe I run an ad and I offer a free short story or book for people who sign up to the mailing list, right? And that brings in another 2,000 people. You see how this starts to work? Like it's not as big an enigma as people make it out to be. There's no magic. You can perfect this and improve on this over time. Guys like Brian Meeks, Nick Thacker, Ernest Dempsey, Mark Dawson, they've all figured out how to finesse the formula. We don't need to stress over the formula. We don't even necessarily have to have a set formula. We can change the formula. We have this list of variables that we can play with, and we find what works for us. For some authors, Facebook advertising is the way to go. They know that if they change variables X, Y, and Z, that they're going to get results A, B, C. Maybe I should have flipped that around. But you get what I'm saying here. Like, they know if I put this much money in for this amount of time, and if I only get this result, then I scrap that ad, and I create a new ad, and I put that much money in for that amount of time. So they play with it. They observe it. They note it. They track that information, and then they adjust the formula accordingly. For others, that isn't appealing. For me, that's not as appealing as looking at this as a marketing content idea, which is something I enjoy. I create content. I aim that content at my my market, and I adjust that content to attract the people that I want, what I consider a vetted list of readers, and then I funnel those readers to my mailing list. If you like this content, you're probably going to like my stuff I send out in my newsletter. Go check it out. Once they're in the newsletter, if you like the content in this newsletter, you're probably going to like this book. That's how I do it. So, and you can combine all this stuff. Anyway, we're pushing 40 minutes here. I'm sorry, I've gone over. I should have wrapped this up like 20 minutes ago, but I thought this stuff was important. Mindset and all that is very important, and I just want to see you succeed. So I'm trying to offer you as many tools as I can shove in your brain. We're going to talk about this some more. This mindset stuff has not ended. We're going to come back to it, but I encourage you to go out and start checking out some resources on your own. In particular, I would read Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I would also read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, which I know kind of gets crapped on by some folks, but this is not magic. This is what I was just describing. This is deciding what you want, figuring out the steps to get to it, doing the steps. That's really what this is. And your mindset changes your actions, so it's about getting your mind right. Take all the magic out of it if you want. I still say it's all magic. So, anyway, that's it. We're gonna wrap up. God bless you. I'm praying for you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're succeeding. Love to hear stories from you. If you've got some success stories, go ahead and pop on over to Wordslinger Podcast and email me. Make sure you subscribe to the show everywhere you find it, and in YouTube in particular. I would love for to see that number go up. I'm going to set a goal, I think. But share this with your friends, with fellow writers, or just anybody who's even interested in any of this stuff. And because it helps out our guests too. I want to make sure we're promoting the work from our authors we talk to. Got some cool interviews coming up, man. You're going to want to stick around. I got some big names going to make an appearance in the show. So that's it. Take care of yourselves out there. God bless you. I'll see you all next time. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Wordslinger Podcast. Now, you can support this show by visiting wordslingerpodcast.com. That's where you're going to find back episodes, books by me, and links to anything and everything Wordslinger. And be sure to subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and anywhere else fine podcasts are sold. I'm Kevin Tomlinson. Thanks for tuning in. We'll check you next time.